Story 1. At this point, even if a Democrat somehow gets elected, the damage is done. Any potential ally has to consider that the United States may change its allegiance every 4 years. In the past, this was never a concern. It is disappointing how leadership has affected diplomacy over the years. Story 2. He is right. There is no need to beat around the bush. You must meet aggressive tones with aggressive tones. Donald Trump has done this. Story 3. When the leader of the country you share a long undefended land border with begins to discuss annexation, and the individual who appears to be running that country despite not being elected states that Canada isn't a real country, a claim often made by Russia about Ukraine, you start to feel the need to prepare for potential conflict. Story 4. As an American, it makes me incredibly sad, and I don't blame my Canadian friends for it. My anger is directed at the reckless and vicious American politicians who are pushing this folly and the cowardly individuals who are allowing it to happen. I want all of them to face severe consequences for their actions. Story 5. We confronted our northern neighbor and biggest trading partner and threatened to annex them as a state for no good reason. Carney didn't have to say this for anyone to realize that, functionally, the relationship is over. Story 6. Americans have taken the benefits of the post-World War II world order for granted, and now they are about to experience a rude awakening about what it is like to no longer have that global stature and prestige. Story 7. I believe it is detrimental for both countries. However, I also think it is the only viable path forward, and it is not their fault. Story 8. After the Second World War, the United States recognized how fortunate it was to come away relatively unscathed and with a tremendously strong economy. The country transformed this advantage into a position of moral leadership, assisting in the rebuilding of much of the world and providing aid globally. While some costs involved allowing military bases around the world to project power and protect us from the red tide, largely the United States was a force for good. However, the United States has now become an inward-looking, selfish, and bloated shadow of its former self. Instead of projecting power and protecting democracy, it claims to be merely subsidizing its own protection, failing to acknowledge that it advocated for this global presence. This situation represents the final gasps of the American Empire, which lasted less than 100 years. Story 9. I find it incredibly sad. The United States and Canada are unique and share centuries of history together. It will never be the same. Story 10. I am Canadian and grew up in a border city. I understand how these auto tariffs will negatively impact many people who rely on the economic partnerships in car manufacturing. Carney is correct. The old ways are over, and Canadians will not forget. We cannot continue to hope that the unpredictable neighbor will change. We need to diversify our trading partners. Sorry, America. It's not us. It's you. Let's take action. Story 11. Sad but true. I hope the relationships can be salvaged in the future when the United States has a government run by intelligent and compassionate leaders. Story 12. It's just the reality. The European Union and the British Commonwealth cannot trust America as a reliable ally. If threats of annexation don't make it clear, what will? The 101st Airborne Division dropping on Toronto. Story 13. I cannot think of another way to respond to Trump's actions, to be honest. I believe this is the only way to respond. I just wish my country would take a stronger stance against him. The world needs to demonstrate to Americans that Trump is hurting them and that we will not be bullied. All he is doing is leading the United States down the path of political isolation. Most of us are still rooting for America, hoping you will stand up to this awful man and remove him from power. You have no future with him in charge. Story 14. You can ask how this happened to the United States all you want. Assign blame to its voters, sure. But ask yourself this instead. Could that happen to my nation? Is it happening to my nation at this moment? My point is for everyone in every free nation to be vigilant. The rise of authoritarian oligarchy is here. Be glad your nation is not the one serving as the example, but understand this, you are just as vulnerable. Story 15. It's true to feel betrayed by a country you thought was your friend and ally. You certainly cannot trust Trump to do the right thing. Story 16. One of history's most successful bilateral partnerships. Speaking as a Canadian, Some of us may start to travel to the United States under a more reasonable government. But for now, imagine a New Yorker telling a friend in October 2001 that they decided to donate $10,000 to Al-Qaeda. That is the kind of traitorous view Canadians would have if someone here booked a family vacation to Disney now. What will never return, not for 50 to 75 years at least, is trust, integration, and cooperation. America had access to all of Canada's resources almost as though we were a state. That is what the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement or the North American Free Trade Agreement provided. Now we are forced to shift our trade patterns around an America-shaped hole on the globe. Rags to riches to rags. Good luck, United States. You need it. Story 17. I cannot see an outcome other than the states separating and becoming a group of smaller countries. There is no way to remove this issue in a 4-year term, especially after observing how passive Democratic politicians are. The 77 million people who voted for Trump are not going to change their ideology after he is gone. I believe this is truly the end of the United States. Story 18. It is unfortunate that the United States has reached a state of potentially unrecoverable anti-intellectualism, disdain for experts, and widespread confusion about right and wrong. Story 19. It needed to be said. It needs to be said by other nations too. Unless the United States is willing to literally rewrite its constitution after this situation is over, assuming it will be over one day, to assure the world that this cannot happen again, no one will trust the United States again. And I am an American. Story 20. The United States would need to undertake significant repair work and rewrite its constitution to specifically limit the overreach of the executive branch to prevent this kind of demagoguery from occurring again before we can return to a fraction of where we were. Story 21. This is game over. There is no coming back from this, at least in my lifetime. Maybe down the road a few generations from now, but this is such a massive mistake. The people who need to understand this the most are uninformed and too distracted by their apparel to care. Story 22. It, and everything else Trump does, makes sense if viewed from the standpoint of him being a Russian asset attempting to destroy American power. Every tariff that raises prices in the United States damages our economy. Every alienation of allies emboldens enemies. Every action by his supporters makes us look like incompetent fools. The United States has been a formidable force in both soft and hard power. Trump has spent every moment in office trying to change that, but the system is designed to prevent any one individual from doing too much damage. That said, he is no longer just one individual. Unlike his previous time in that position, he is now in a better political position to cause harm, and he is fully taking advantage of it. I would like to think we are strong enough to last another 4 years, but I am just not sure. Story 23. As an American, I say this is what people voted for. Nothing here is new. This is how Donald Trump handled things the first time. Story 24. It's probably the smartest thing they could do. The United States has become the toxic friend you need to quietly cut out of your life. Story 25. Awful. All the people who didn't bother to vote, that's who I want to hear from. How embarrassing. Story 26. I was born in Canada and am half American. I still hold American citizenship as well as Canadian. The relationship is over for the foreseeable future. The United States does not have any clear provisions to prevent voters from voting against their interests and electing leaders who act against their geopolitical interests. Their global influence is effectively over. The rest of the world will soon treat the United States as a rogue state, not a leader, and use whatever methods are available to contain and limit it. To guarantee that this does not happen again, the United States would have to conduct reforms so sweeping that it would no longer resemble the United States. Either way, we are through the looking glass. Canadians cannot ignore geography. We have potash that they need, and potash does not ship as well. No doubt the Trump administration will fantasize about using Russian potash instead, leading to truly inefficient supply chains for fertilizer for a time. However, my larger point remains. Canada is likely to be the United States' largest trading partner moving forward, although it may not be more than that. Story 27. As an American who voted against Trump every time, it's disheartening, but I have to agree. The matter isn't that Trump won through some quirk of the electoral system as he did in 2016. No, he won the popular vote. He received more votes than Kamala Harris, even disregarding the people who didn't vote, who by their inaction supported Trump, however unintentionally or unwillingly. The message the world heard was that the clear majority of Americans wanted Trump and Elon Musk's authoritarian warmongering version of a government. So no, as an American who wanted to see Trump behind bars and either forgotten or remembered as a deceitful traitor, I don't disagree with Carney or any other nations taking a stance against my country. You have been failed. You don't have to take it. Trump expects you to roll over like everyone else he steamrolled to get where he is. Don't give in to him. Don't let him bully you. Fight. I don't think he really knows what to do if or when someone fights back. Put him on the defensive. Make him realize he's not all-powerful like he wants to be. Make him feel like the small, pathetic man he truly is. Story 28. I believe my fellow Americans who voted for that individual and his illegal immigrant associate can be very disappointed. Story 29. I hope whoever we get as President of the United States in the next election, regardless of party, makes it an administrative priority to repair and reestablish everything this administration is damaging, even though it may take years, if ever, to undo the harm we are causing to the rest of the free world right now. Story 30. I am genuinely shocked that this situation didn't occur sooner. As an ally, we experience significant mood swings every 4 years. One minute we are saying that the world needs to unite to stop climate change, and then suddenly we claim that climate change is a hoax made by China and express a desire to revive coal. Story 31. It's a more coherent and rational statement than either Donald Trump or Jeff Bezos has made in the last few decades. Story 32. As long as the current administration is in power, it is absolutely correct. America is no longer a friend or ally, not to Canada, not to Mexico, and not to the European Union. Story 33. He is right. America is in the process of failing as a state. That is not a situation you want to be part of. Story 34. When he called Trump a mob boss, I immediately understood Trump's bullying of Canada. Trump is a criminal who believes he can intimidate straightforward, honest people. He belongs in prison. Story 35. Inmate P01135809, an adjudicated rapist, deserves everything coming his way. The rest of us need to hang on tight. A short history of what happens to presidents in Peru from 2000 to now. Alberto Fujimori. July 1990 to November 2000, 10 years. Imprisoned for corruption and crimes against humanity. Valentin Paniagua. November 2000 to July 2001, 9 months. Transitional President. Alejandro Toledo. July 2001 to July 2006, 5 years. Extradited for money laundering and collusion. Alan Garcia. July 2006 to July 2011, 5 years. Died by suicide, accused of bribery and corruption. Ollanta Humala. July 2011 to July 2016, 5 years. Imprisoned, accused of bribery and corruption. That's 2 presidents in a row. Pedro Kaczynski. July 2016 to March 2018, almost 2 years. Under house arrest, accused of bribery. At least there are no corruption charges. Martin Vizcarra. March 2018 to November 2020, 2.5 years. Ousted in a coup with accusations of moral incompetence. Manuel Merino. 6 days. Resigned due to protests and riots. Francisco Sagasti. November 2020 to July 2021, 9 months. Transitional President. Pedro Castillo. July 2021 to December 2022, 1.5 years. Detained in custody for attempting to dissolve Congress. Story 36. As a Canadian, I think it's really sad. This doesn't change my opinion of Americans. I have many American friends, but the current American government and their actions towards their closest ally don't make sense to me. Story 37. Decades of cooperation and friendship were destroyed in months by con artists who stole the election. We will return Canada. It's our turn to apologize. Story 38. The United States doesn't deserve our friendship. Go ask Putin to be your friend, trust him like you could trust us, and see how that goes. Story 39. Carney is correct. We can only hope that Trump serves only one term and is removed in the next election. I am not the only person who believes we will face a severe recession, as many economists are expressing similar concerns. As someone who has $1,400 per month in income and a stack of medical bills despite having Medicare, I am struggling financially, but there are others in even worse situations. We cannot continue in this manner. Story 40. Step 1. Ruin relationships. Step 2. Ruin Alberta. When oil is turned off, the populace starts rebelling as a result. Step 3. Frame Canada and protesters as terrorists and open fire. Step 4. Step in to deal with all the terrorism and focus on Alberta and British Columbia, pumping a lot of money back into those areas to win over the populace. Step 5. Offer a ceasefire now that they have a path to the Arctic and Alaska. Story 41. America has long struggled with issues of racism, xenophobia, unearned pride, a superiority complex, false interpretations of Christianity, anti-science ignorance, and a multitude of problematic behaviors. Trump appealed to this demographic and has maintained a loyal core of supporters who are fiercely dedicated to him. Our Constitution ensures that individuals reflecting the views of Trump's supporters have the opportunity to influence the government every 4 years. Any nation considering a trade deal, mutual defense treaty, or any agreement with the United States must fully understand these dynamics and act accordingly. Buyer beware. It is also important to note that the president has control of a vast arsenal of nuclear weapons. Story 42. Canada should close the border with the United States. This action would impact the conservatives who hunt and fish in that region. Story 43. As an American, it's likely a smart move on their part. It may be challenging for us in the long run, but I understand. Story 44. It is incredibly depressing but necessary. America has proven it cannot be trusted. Even if the next administration comes in and tries to make amends, who is to say another Republican will not come in 4 years later and create further issues? The United States is in a difficult situation right now, and until it resolves its problems, the rest of the world must move on without it. Story 45. This is not a new issue. It has existed since before Mark Carney became relevant in the political arena again. Story 46. Trump has been openly stating his desire to invade Canada. He has a remarkable effect on people where he expresses what he truly believes, and then Republicans respond, yes, but he probably didn't mean it, while moderates think, that's so outrageous. The media must be misreporting it because a US president would never say or do such a thing. Story 47. I am American and love my country. I also love our Canadian neighbors. It saddens me that our elected officials are harming this relationship. I hope most Canadians know that most Americans see them as friends. We appreciate you, Canada. Story 48. I try to avoid American products and services whenever possible, but I will settle for them if they are the only option and come from a blue state. Otherwise, no thanks. Story 49. It is true. The United States can no longer be trusted. They have even threatened annexation. How can Canada trust them anymore? Story 50. Trump is not doing anything to you. He does not care about you. He is only interested in America. Why should he care about any other country? It is not entirely Trump's fault that the United States has a debt of $36 trillion, but he is responsible for trying to turn the country around, and that is exactly what he is doing. Story 51. America is the only country in the world with freedom and liberty, and we don't need anyone telling us what tight security is because we can manage everything on our own. Trump was chosen by a higher power to put Americans first again. We are once again respected globally. Now excuse me while I wait on hold for 4 hours to talk to someone about why my Social Security check hasn't arrived this month. Story 52. It's true. The current United States administration has severely damaged this decades-long relationship in less than 3 months. Tariffs, threats of annexation, election interference, detaining innocent travelers, and other actions have aimed to undermine Canada's sovereignty. The relationship is over and should not be considered until the United States can consistently maintain a functioning administration that reflects the interests of its citizens. Unfortunately, as an American, I don't see that happening in my lifetime. The situation in the United States is the end result of prioritizing profit and the interests of the wealthy over everyday people for the last 50 years. Story 53. Trump is a self-serving liar who cannot be trusted by anyone, including Canadians. Carney is not one to sugarcoat the truth. Story 54. There is no surprise here, and it is honestly deserved. The United States is not seen as a reliable ally anymore, especially regarding intelligence sharing. When you have an administration focused on isolationism, it is not shocking that allies honor those desires and maintain their distance. If another terrorist attack occurred today, part of me believes that due to the damage done, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's Collective Defense Clause would not be invoked. Furthermore, due to the previous administration, national security is genuinely at risk. I am sure some information is still being shared, but it is guaranteed that a lot of information is now being withheld, especially to ensure nothing is given to foreign adversaries. Story 55. I disagree with the fascist leader and those who support him. If you want to be an isolationist, that's your choice. Story 56. You cannot disregard the allies who supported you through both good times and bad. This is entirely justified by Canada. Story 57. I will never trust an American again. 70% of them either voted for Donald Trump or did not vote at all. How can I ever trust someone blindly like that again? No, I will actively avoid Americans, and if forced to interact with them, I will question them about who they voted for. The United States is a failure and needs to be humbled. Story 58. He is not wrong. Although military cooperation is somewhat misguided, Trump is not entirely wrong about the United States protecting everyone and countries not doing their part. We just thought we would always have our big brother watching out for us. Story 59. It is the right move for Canada. You have to take leaders at their word. Trump is playing a dangerous game. Now we are all going to lose. Story 60. As a Canadian, it's a tragedy that it's true. We can't build our economy around a system that lets any United States president wreak havoc the way Donald Trump is doing. And we can't build our military based on American weapons and equipment that the United States can disable whenever they please because they're threatening to annex us. We watched the lunacy during the first term, and most of the people I spoke to about it agreed that it was a bizarre blip in history triggered largely by Russian interference in the election that Trump won. When we saw Trump shift his messaging from, "We were robbed," after his loss to Joe Biden to campaigning for 2024, we said, there's no way they could possibly let him back in for another term. The first time was a blip. The second time is a pattern. Americans have serious problems to fix before we can trust anything important with you again. In his first term, Trump made it clear to the civilized world that he is unfit for leadership. And then he was given a second term. So far, he has tried to use Russia's war of territorial aggression against Ukraine to extort mineral and energy rights from them. He even staged a spectacle with Volodymyr Zelensky to show his master Vladimir Putin how he is playing hardball. Then he cut critical intelligence from Ukraine, weakening their air defenses to put pressure on them. Someday we will receive a report on the number of casualties Ukraine sustained during the outage that wouldn't have happened if the data pipe was left on. That's Ukrainian blood on American hands for rare metals and nuclear power. I'm pretty sure that for the amount of resources invested in killing Ukrainians to steal their land, Putin could have started construction on any number of green energy projects. Think of how many things could have been built by the tens of thousands of Russians sent to die for money that their families will never see. The tariffs and issues could have been dismissed as, Trump is problematic, go figure. The tough guy routine trying to live up to his favorite despots will be one of the keynotes in the list of reasons he is one of the most reviled figures in American history. Story 61. It is disheartening how much damage one individual can cause. It is troubling how anyone could consider this person competent or suitable for office. It is unfortunate to witness him betray old friends and allies. The individual displays sociopathic tendencies and appears to have a persecution complex. I feel disappointed in him and many others. I never thought I would see this day. Story 62. If true, this is a significant shift. Will Canada become more independent, pivot to other allies, or just loosen ties? There are major implications for trade and security. Story 63. I am an American and I completely understand. These are sad times when years of friendship and cooperation are disregarded. Our administration has let everyone down, both us and them. Story 64. Well, it's not like he wants to say it. It's a whole can of worms. Nobody wants to think about what is going on in America. The reality is what it is. Story 65. Trump and the Republicans damaged relations with long-term allies through their inconsistent tariffs and provocative rhetoric. Story 66. He probably isn't wrong. I blame the individuals who voted for Trump again, especially those who did not participate in the election. There was a clear difference between the candidates, but here we are once more. Story 67. I am very sad that our friendship with Canada has come to an end. It didn't have to be this way. If the country hadn't elected such an unsuitable leader, we wouldn't be in this situation. People here are very uninformed. Story 68. Even when Trump's administration is over, I don't think the close relationship will return. There are enough Americans who will still vote for another presidency similar to Trump, making reliance on the United States simply not an option anymore. Canada would do best to look elsewhere for trade and security. Story 69. This is the long-term goal of conservatives regardless of their location. John Stuart Mill stated that not all conservatives are uninformed, but many uninformed individuals tend to be conservative. A less educated populace will likely support conservative policies. We see a similar trend in Canada, particularly in Alberta. Conservatives have long advocated for the defunding of education, and the outcomes reflect this. Donald Trump is not acting independently. He is influenced by wealthy interests. Canada and Greenland both possess significant untapped reserves of natural resources. Have you noticed the content on social media lately? It often contributes to a decline in critical thinking. How far do you have to scroll to encounter an insightful post? This is intentional. Educational standards in both universities and schools have significantly decreased, as has general intelligence by many measures. People are often too fatigued and defeated to pose thoughtful questions. The internet, once a realm of vast opportunities, has become so diluted that it is unrecognizable compared to its potential 2 decades ago. Again, by design. There is a real possibility that before Trump and his associates have the opportunity to exert control over Canada and Greenland, there may be significant civil unrest. There are protests and some action being taken, although it is currently too little, too late. However, the movement is gaining momentum. This is not widely covered by mainstream media, but I encourage you to seek out and participate in the protests happening in Canada and the United States. Story 70. I hope they end all trading and ban all U.S. products and services. Close the border, destroy the Peace Bridge and Rainbow Bridge, and save themselves. We in the United States are all in a difficult situation. There is no reason to bring a wonderful country like Canada down with us. Story 71. Just so everyone is clear, absolutely no one voted for this. They definitely voted for a candidate with outdated ideas about how international trade works. But he didn't mention Canada until well after the election. The sad thing is that they were so comfortable assuming the tariff talk was mostly bluster that the discussion about Canada likely wouldn't have affected them. But still, for the record, nobody voted for threatening Canada. I just hope the people who don't vote or vote for third parties learn something from all of this. You realistically have 2 choices, one of which will win, and everyone will have to deal with the outcome whether all of your ideals were satisfied by those choices or not. Story 72. I believe we need a global embargo on the United States. The entire world should turn its back on the country and provide the isolation it seeks. Story 73. The United States is the unfaithful partner. We might pretend for the sake of the children and peace in the household, but we will never forget and we will never forgive. Story 74. I believe we need to remove the individuals illegally occupying the White House and Congress. Story 75. This will be detrimental for Canada if we disregard all trade with the United States. Mark Carney will harm Canada. Story 76. He is acting tough before the election and will fold like origami paper afterward. He is only prolonging negotiations for his benefit and to the detriment of the Canadian people. Canada charges a 6.1% tariff on car imports from the United States. The United States charges 2.5% on imports from Canada. The former president has asked for equal tariffs, but Canada refused, resulting in large retaliatory tariffs until they level the playing field. Story 77. I think it sounds good in a campaign speech. However, Canada is effectively a branch economy of the United States, and what isn't owned by the United States is in the hands of an oligopoly like Robolus. A pro-corporate neoliberal technocrat like Carney is philosophically incapable of changing that, if the clay was even malleable in the first place. So, fine words that will amount to little in the end. This has triggered the Carney supporters. Story 78. Everybody loves the status quo when it's all in their favor. Free trade means no tariffs imposed by any country. Oh, they don't want that. Story 79. I would say actions are louder than words. I would not associate with us either, especially if our policies change every 4 years. Story 80. Just like in real life, do not put all your eggs in one basket. Also, do not think that your friends today will be your friends in the future. Story 81. I believe it's something you might consider, but do not say publicly. What benefit is there to Canadians, our security, or national interests by making this statement? None. The truth is, without United States cooperation, our military is extremely weak, so we should refrain from gambling our security and sovereignty on talking points that may be suitable for a campaign but ultimately jeopardize Canada. Story 82. We can recover after the Heritage Foundation ends. I support a world without borders, but this is not the solution. Story 83. I am eager for the Canadian military-industrial complex where the Canadian Ministry of Defense misplaces hundreds of billions of dollars. Story 84. Not Trump's fault. It is the fault of the people who voted him in. That is how our democracy works. The voters failed. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.